Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the session. It's about how Al Jazeera Media Network is using and utilizing the API management gateway from CA and extending its reach across different enterprise and content distribution solutions. As my introduction, my name is Rizwan Ahmed, and I'm head of digital platforms at the network. I'm joined by my colleague Jad. He's our principal lead engineer for the API gateway at Al Jazeera. So, quickly taking you through the agenda itself for the session today. We'll be looking at a little bit more deeper introduction into what Al Jazeera is, what we do, what we cover, what we produce in terms of the contents, and then how we are going through the journey of digital optimization for Al Jazeera and the role of APIs in that, and the journey that it took us to select the platform, roll it out, and then take the best or maximum benefit out of it as return on investment of the API management platform. First, a bit about Al Jazeera Media Network. It's a media network of a couple of channels. I would say a couple of channels in terms of the coverage that we have. So we have around 5+ languages being covered. It's English, Arabic, Balkans, Turkish, and also we have Spanish, Chinese, and Malay coming up soon. So it becomes like 7+ languages. So we are 7+ live broadcast channels that we are operating today, and with 80+ bureaus across the world for all the news coverage and across the world. And when it comes to the distribution of our contents across the platforms, we have our coverage on 50+ digital platforms. And that means we are generating around 100+ million page views on the websites and also other digital distribution systems. And in terms of our reach of the channels, if you see at the bottom, we have Al Jazeera Arabic, English, documentary channel. Al Jazeera Mubashir is more like covering live events. Al Jazeera Balkans, Turkish. And then there are some other business units, but AJ Plus, if you might have heard of it, AJ Plus is a new way of bringing news to the young audience, right? So it's more socially driven, it's more on the social platforms, and that's why the role of API becomes even more important in that context. And to understand more the way Al Jazeera operates, across the organization, if we look at end-to-end the way we perform different functions, we definitely do content production. So content production would cover the on-screen and online contents. The way we acquire contents, we create and then package and distribute contents. That's all on the production side. On the enterprise side, we have support services, and that would mean all our ERP systems, any intranets, portals, or any other custom line of business applications, and other functions like project management, let's say. And operations is the way we actually do things. And that would mean service delivery, service management, continuous monitoring, quality control on everything that we are doing across these verticals. And the last but the most important one is because we produce contents. So content distribution is the last mile of our functions, which means that it's all about the reach and engagement. And then it's a growing, I would say, objective, or it's trending upward for the last couple of years, is to be more optimized towards revenue and monetization when it comes to media industry itself. And to make sure that we have the right platforms and we have the right technologies or the investments is in the right direction, we have something, we call it Al Jazeera Digital Optimization. It's a program, it's a set of different programs and projects that is really focused on making sure that everything that we are trying to do is in the right direction. So in short, we call it ADO, Al Jazeera Digital Optimization. It's all about direct or indirect optimization of the processes and platforms and the people and the partners involved in making sure that our digital operations are up to the mark. And up to the mark means they're future-proof, they are in line with the industry standards, and actually they should be ahead of other competitive. It's a competitive market, media industry, especially with the way we consume news. So we have to make sure that we are always enabling the business to stay ahead in this business, in this industry. And so we are focusing on people, we are focusing on processes and technology. And it's all about, when you say people, it's all about the stakeholders, partners, the internal people news producers, editors, and the engineers, the technology team. On the processes side, all the workflows, in terms of our development life cycles, in terms of the way we produce contents, we distribute contents, the process part of that. And the last, but the most important one, especially in the context of this discussion, is the technology platform. And we're talking about, content management systems, APIs, digital asset management systems or platforms that integrate you with other media systems. Because in the end, we are not just one digital vertical industry organization. We are getting content, so we are getting certain input from our newsrooms and other backend systems, and then passing those on to our digital platforms. So it's the most important piece in this case. And if we really break it down, that what does it look like in terms of our focus areas for the optimization, then because we are a set of TV channels, so it means definitely we will be in the video business, video and live streaming. We are definitely into content management systems, so content production is there. And digital asset management is all the related supporting media assets that complete the story, whether on the screen or online. So complete set of digital asset management capabilities. Social engagement, whatever we produce for the web or for the apps or for other platforms have to be socially available. And that means, social networks. I mean, it's gone are the days when you would get something manually, post it on Facebook. You want a seamless experience right from your content production onto anything that is accessible by our audience. And social networks like Facebook, Twitter, and all these are not an option anymore. They are a necessity for you to reach out to your audience. And that would mean that they have to be part of your primary considerations when it comes to the capabilities of the set of platforms that you're trying to put in place. We're also focusing on enterprise mobility because that's when we talk about the distribution side, on the consumer side, that's understood, that you have to have your contents available on mobile and other devices. But also one second part of that is enterprise mobility. How does the organization get onto the mobility capabilities for across the organization and different systems? We are also investing in optimizing our content distribution network and hosting infrastructure, and everything this part or this component has to do with all other different components of the digital optimization picture. And we are trying to optimize our processes, or we are, when I say trying to, it means that it's a complex process of optimizing a 24/7 functional organization. So you'll always have to have the considerations of not stopping something and making sure that the business continues 24/7 while you have a separate track of optimization for all your processes and platforms in place. And the most important one that I left purposely, but is the top one here, is the API platform itself. Everything that we are talking about here, content management, digital asset management, social publishing, or mobility, or any other thing, if you do not glue it together in the right way, then something will break somewhere that puts you behind where your competitors are. And today, in today's world, any organization that is not investing in the right capabilities for the API management or the integration capabilities across the organization, then definitely there's a price to pay. So we understand that, and we are heavily investing in developing and bringing on board the right API management capabilities when it comes to Al Jazeera's operations. And we'll see in a couple of minutes that how Al Jazeera is making the use of CA's API management platform across different areas which range from very external facing to very internal facing. And the most important one after that, once you have done all that, you want to know how did you perform. So analytics, and again, analytics about your products, analytics about your platforms. And again, API is one integral part of that. We'll see how the analytics of the APIs make a difference for a company like Al Jazeera as a media company. In terms of focusing more on the API platform from a media company's point of view as Al Jazeera, I want to talk about a little bit what our previous state was and how we are transforming into the next state based on CA's API management platform. The previous state, we call it doing things right. As a media company, we have been putting our best efforts to keep doing things in the right way, because as I said, it's a competitive industry. You always have to make sure that you are competing with and you are up to the mark of the audience expectations and the industry standards and everything. So you have to do, there's no room for doing things wrong. You always have to do things right. And by that, what we mean from, as per our previous state was that if I divide it into different verticals of API management, the most important one is how do you get your core business to your actual end user? And for a media company, it's news, contents being produced for the audience, and how do we make sure that these contents are flowing flawlessly to our target audience? And we call it content distribution in terms of the API. So content distribution API means that all the contents being produced in the backend systems, content management, or any other source of content that is being brought in. I mean, we do live blogs, we do also posts on the social networks, and then also some interactive stuff, and also video production. How does all that content flows to your target audience on your different platforms? So content distribution point of view, we are quite mature in terms of our previous state. We were quite mature because you need it. I mean, you cannot survive without that. And if I put it in numbers, we have like 150 plus different endpoints. And by endpoints, we mean we're talking about coverage on the digital platforms, apps, partners, distribution, whether it's for B2B or B2C or anything else. It's a set of, and every endpoint requires its own set of requirements for security, formats, schemas, you name it, all content distribution elements that would come in here. And not so mature, but it still existed on a very ad hoc basis, was our enterprise service bus and backend as a service rollout, where you can quickly spin up certain services to make sure that your time to market for those services is quite is fast. And we have been doing it quite ad hoc because our focus was mainly our core business, which is content production in this case. All right. And the current state after we have the CA's API management is what we call doing the right things. So moving on from doing things right on to doing the right things means that you have to invest in technologies, platforms, systems, solutions, you name it, that makes you ready for the next step, that makes you ready for what's coming up in the industry as a trend, as a challenge, as an opportunity, or anything that puts you in the front line of this business. And since we moved on to the CA's API management platform, it was driven by certain objectives, which are technological business objectives. And if we say, with the cost of operations going low in terms of technology, but at the same time cost of it going high in terms of the skill set that you need and the type of people that you need in your organization, you have to make sure that all your technology investments are centralized and standardized. So you don't want to have different systems for different integration standards for different systems. And you want to optimize it in terms of your return on investment as well. So if we really summarize it, it's centralization, standardization, and optimization of your technology investments for a 360 omni-channel impact that is wherever you are, whatever you are, whoever you are, you're getting the right service out of the platform. So we are using the CA's API management platform in 4 distinct functional areas. The first one is the most important one for the core business, that is the content APIs. We're also using it for enterprise mobility. We'll talk more about it, how exactly it fits into the picture. Then also as service bus and backend as a service. And just before we jump into the actual usage of the platform, we just want to talk about, I'll take you through the journey itself, that how did we end up with CA's API management? For a media company, what matters the most when it comes to selecting the right API platform at that scale that CA's API management gateway provides? So the first thing is that you would look at any API platform as its general capabilities. And that means, the provisioning of APIs and the management of APIs have to be friendly and simple to use for the API developers or product managers or even the end users. End users means developers or consumers. Performance and security is at the very heart of it. I was just outside and looking at that. The response time that it takes for your application or your website to respond back is less than the time that it took me to read that small note. You know what I mean? So it matters a lot when it comes to every bit and piece of your end-to-end solution, and you have to make sure that you have the right and robust solutions in place to get the right performance. The more you invest in digital platforms, the more you expand your digital surface area, the more you're vulnerable to security. So security is an important aspect here. Then, of course, what you would think of any standard platform, support and operations, its extensibility, and its product roadmap. But what's coming up now, or what has already come up, is that whether this platform is taking you to the next level of mobility and cloud services, or is it cloud ready or not. Understanding your technology landscape, and that means you can select in any platform, but if that platform is not compatible with your existing technology landscape, then you'll break something here or there in terms of the integration points. If I talk about Al Jazeera's the technology landscape that we really looked into, and we divided into 4 distinct areas, we have corporate applications or corporate services, and that means it's really about intranets, portals, some custom line of business applications that are more corporate service related, and it's also about certain services. I mean, it could be a telephony service, the internal IP telephony system, or it could be, let's say, even your email service. Your corporate email is a service that is considered corporate in its nature. On the enterprise side, we have a custom line of business applications that purely deal with what we call as Al Jazeera, and we call it our support services, and that means finance, procurement, HR, or all those support functions that are not the core business for a media company, but they are integral for the success and the existence of the business. And of course, at the very heart of that is our ERP system, which is managing all those different functional areas. Being the media company, the third element here is the broadcast, which usually, for another company might not be there, but it's a complex set of internal broadcast systems that have to integrate with everything that you're trying to do. And that would mean, how do you integrate your broadcast systems back to either corporate or enterprise side? And the last one, but the most important one in the context of API management discussion, is the digital itself. And that means, it's everything that you have to do about your digital presence across the platforms, with so many products, with so many partners that you have to deal with. And we'll have some further examples of this, that what exactly is the scale of these integrations for these platforms, products, and partners when we talk about Al Jazeera's API capabilities. Moving forward, as being more future-proof, everybody is talking about cloud now. If I say that cloud is your new home in terms of your data, everything that you do, nobody is, you cannot consider a situation where you are not on the cloud. Your data is on the cloud, your emails are on the cloud, and then when you bring that cloud onto your enterprise and your core business, then you have to make sure that you're doing the right way in terms of interfaces, the capabilities of those interfaces, the capacity, the security, and the performance of that. And further expanding that is IoT, Internet of Things. And that means, how are you taking your business to the new buzzwords? How are you taking your business to things that matter the most in emerging technologies and emerging markets? IoT, and we'll see a little bit more that how we as Al Jazeera have responded back to the concept of IoT in certain areas. And once you know your technology landscape, then you start connecting the dots together. And that's what we call the integration patterns. That would mean how different systems connect together to offer certain services, and that those services are exposed to the external world through certain interfaces. In this case, let's say if we have 2 systems, A and B, they can provide their own services, service A and service B. But at the same time, 2 systems can come together to create a new service. And then that service can be exposed through multiple endpoints, depending on what the security requirements were, what the schema requirements were, who was the partner, whether there's any confidential information that has to flow out or not. So these integrations pattern will determine the capability of your integration platform, which is, in this case, is the CS API Management Gateway. And if we dig deeper into these building blocks, every building block would have certain features or capabilities of its own. As a system, that's where your business data exists. Or in other words, we call those systems of records, let's say. Your business logics might be there. The user permissions sit there and other configurations about that system. And then when you expose those systems through different services, in the context of APIs, we're talking about, it could be a simple pass-through. You just get the data, you pass it on to the next level. Or you can transform it, certain transformations and orchestration of your data. You might be performing certain lookups. We'll talk about the examples that we have, how Al Jazeera is using that. And automating, scheduling, triggering, logging in terms of the capabilities of these services. And when it comes to the interface, that's where the actual interaction happens between two different systems or two different platforms, or a developer and your backend systems, or another partner and your backend systems. So we're talking about protocols, schemas, formats, the control on those endpoints, the governance about those endpoints, and especially when you invest on a platform like CA's API Management Gateway, it brings you the capabilities of versioning and documentation as the way you expose the APIs and the way you document the APIs. And so far, this is all what we know. I mean, it's all in terms of whether I would say, this is what we used to know. Moving on, we have to consider digital disruption happening. And there's no industry vertical that is not impacted by that. And if you see on the left side, it just talks about that the percentage, the chances of how much each industry might be impacted by the digital disruption. All the discussion about digital transformation happening across the organizations. And if you see, it's not surprising because the way industries are evolving, it's not surprising at all that the top one is media industry. 72% of the executives think that it's the media industry that will be disrupted the most when it comes to digital transformation. And that also means that it's an opportunity, definitely, for the media companies, but also it's a challenge for us as a media company. How are we responding back to this disruption? Or whether it's a challenge or it's an opportunity, how do we respond back to that? And some of the key elements in this digital disruption that are playing an important role, as I said earlier, cloud. Everybody is investing in cloud, and it's easy to put your digital stuff on the cloud, which is already digital. I'm talking about your news contents as websites and apps and even APIs. But you have to take your newsroom to the cloud. You have to take your news operations to the cloud. How do you do that, right? Also taking the benefit or bringing in the power of cognitive capabilities. And it's all about AI. And if you heard the keynote, there were lots of references back to AI and how it is transforming the way businesses operate. So bringing in the cognitive aspects, again, the only way you can do it is if your systems, backend systems, are exposed through secure, robust, scalable interfaces. And again, that's where the APIs would come in. Bots are kind of a new concept in terms of, while bots are not new, they existed back in the days of, if somebody still remembers the IRC chat stuff, there used to be bots that respond back to your, whenever you log into a room and all that stuff. But in the new context, in the media context, it means that you need bots that can respond back to someone's requirement about news, let's say, an event or some news is breaking, and then it's the bot that breaks the news to you rather than you going to the news comes to you. On the media system side, we're talking about there's wealth of information that is sitting inside or that is lying and hiding inside all your tapes and all your digital assets that are in your media asset management systems. How do you make sure that, let's say, if I talk about Al Jazeera, we have like 20 plus years of footage and archive that is from across the world, or everything that Al Jazeera has covered. What are we doing with that information? How are we making sure that this information is flowing back to the audience, even as an archive, but how does it flow back to the audience in a way that is more favorable to the audience to consume those contents? Big data, everything that we do, everything in the four functions that I talked about across the organization, production and enterprise and operations and distribution, at every bit and step of that, we produce a lot of data. There's operational data, there's production data, there's consumption data in terms of our analytics. And then when you put all these different data types together, what you get out is structured and unstructured data. and that would mean, it's difficult to consume. It's difficult to digest for a traditional BI system. That's where the big data would come in. And again, the way you would interface these different systems together is what defines your success in the big data domain itself. IoT, as I said again, is part of the digital disruption. We'll see how Al Jazeera is stepping into IoT when it comes to using the API management gateway. And not the least, but maybe the most important one when you have to invest on an API management platform is, even if you know everything about your industry, even if you have done your research about that, okay, these are the 50 platforms, or these are 20 different types of products, and these are our 10 partners that we are working with today, you have to be ready for anything. And what we call it, you have to be ready for the unknowns. It means that there are so many unknowns I would say in the technology world itself, but especially in the media industry, because who would know that you would be consuming your news on an IoT thing? Let's say if we talk about Amazon Echo or smart homes or smart auto stuff going on. So there's so many unknowns that were, let's say, unknown a few years back, and there might be unknowns coming up in the future that you don't know about. It means that the platform that you are investing in should be ready for anything, and we call it the any factor. And if you see, it's about anytime, any context, anything, any device, anywhere, anyone, and you name it. There's so many N's that you have to invest in. You have to make sure that the platform will take you there, irrespective of whatever it is. It could be anything, right? And that means the platform has to be an open platform. It should open up to new technologies, new standards, new protocols, new way of doing business, new way of talking, different systems talking to each other. Open standards, for sure. That's how different systems might be more comfortable talking to each other when you follow certain open standards. Extensible, and then the room for custom development. The way API, if we talk about CA's API management platform, it perfectly fits into this picture where it has out of the box so many capabilities that puts you in the any factor thing. At the same time, if there's something that is not there, you can just create custom policies and custom assertions and get your way going. So, and if there's any that you do not know today and your platform is not ready for that, then one way or the other, you will either invest in new technologies or a different technology, or you will definitely, you hamper your time to market. Whatever is, and especially for when it comes to a media company, the speed that you break the news with, that is what makes you, a news media leader in this case, right? So everything is about making sure that you're first one to respond back to. Now, this is how when we were looking at different API management platforms, we looked into all those factors that I just talked about. We looked at our landscape, technology landscape. We looked at our requirements. We looked at the unknowns of the industry that we have, which means that be ready for anything. And then, usually the way the business works, the media business works, I can tell you it's so much dominated in terms of the decision making, or the time to go live, or the time to produce something. It is all driven by editors. It's driven by journalists, not technologists. It means that they might be thinking of something for quite some time, and then they come to you and they say, oh, we have to go live tomorrow with this thing. And then, you don't know how to respond back to that request and say, I'm sorry, I cannot do it. Or you say, no problem, we have CA's API management, and we'll do it. The readiness is all that matters in this. And usually, I don't want to say it as a scapegoat, but technology is usually taken as the bottleneck in your editorial operations when it comes to the time to respond back to new ways of doing business in the media industry. And we have been through this for the last 16 years or so, and we have learned it the hard way in terms of, like any other media company, it's like every time something has a new concept of doing news comes in, technology is told, do it, but technology is not made part of the discussion. It's changing now, of course. It's a changing time for the media industry where technology, again, there was a statement this morning that in the keynote, that technology carries your brand on its shoulders, right? It means that the capabilities of the technology or your technology team or your technology platforms is the one that actually makes sure that your brand integrity and the performance of that or the impact of that is the right one across the industry that you are targeting in your specific business vertical. So once we have that, there are a number of scenarios that you can come up with. And I always say that the product designers, the product managers from, let's say, CA Technologies, when they are creating products, they have a specific mindset of creating that. And then it is up to the creativity of the customer. How does he use the platform? So it could be simply an API management platform in one specific vertical, or you might be using it for across the board. So we'll see how Jazeera is using it across different verticals and how we are making sure that through minimal investment in terms of cost, in terms of skill set, in terms of the team, that is how we are responding back to the needs of multiple verticals within the network, within Al Jazeera Media Network, and making sure that it's the same team who remains in control of performance, security, standards, and rollout of all these integration points. So these are 4 key areas that we as Al Jazeera have used and we are using the API management platform for. I'll start from the first one, which is Backend as a service. It's not a new concept, as we call it BaaS, or with the mobile it's becoming MBaaS, like mobile Backend as a service. It's a set of microservices that you can come up with, or even certain level of automation that you can bring in to make sure that you have fragmented but still integrated set of services that can function independent of each other, but completing a bigger picture together. And the time that it would take for you to spin out new services is what would matter to make sure that the bigger picture is always successful. And we have seen that, or we have successfully, actually, we are using it for a number of such services where we are using the API management platform for automating certain backend processes as either as automation steps or as backend as a service to expose certain internal microservices onto different platforms. The second one is mobility gateway, and that would mean, or maybe before that, if I give you examples of, let's say, the backend as a service. We have a use case where we have a telephony system, IP telephony system being used. That's the new standard of doing telephony, implementing telephony in any organization. And the requirement was that whenever I miss a call on my desk and I'm not there, I want a push notification sent to our enterprise mobile app that, oh, you have a missed call on your desk. However you want to respond back to that, right? And if you look at the complexity of this whole thing, it's not complex, but what makes it complex is that the systems are not made to talk to each other. We use Cisco Call Manager in this case, let's say, and the way the Cisco Call Manager manages the logs is a different way, and the way we need to send out push notifications is a different word. It's all disconnected. So the way the API management platform works is that the Cisco Call Manager doesn't really have robust APIs that can respond back to every missed call. What it does is it dumps the logs, the missed calls logs, in an FTP Dropbox. The gateway, well, we call it an API management gateway, but it's more than API management gateway. That's what we call it. It connects to the FTP Dropbox. It runs through all the log files that have been dumped there, opens the files, applies some data extraction, dump the data somewhere in a SQL server, and then starts running through those missed calls and starts sending out the notification. So you wouldn't expect it from a standard API management gateway that, reading an FTP folder, running through the files, and then sending something out. So if you look at the agility and flexibility or the capability of, and that's what we call anything to anything. You think of something on one side as the source, whatever you want to do with that, and then you send it out to anything you want. And CA's API management platform has been, I would say, very flexible in this type of capabilities. On the mobility gateway side, we are using it for, we have just started using it for identity management across our enterprise apps as single sign-on. So using the out-of-the-box, which are part of the solution, the SDKs, once you log into your one enterprise app, you can just pass it on the same session, authenticated session for another app on the same device. So single sign-on is working well. And then also device provisioning, making sure that the device that connects to your enterprise apps is in control, you are in control of that. At least you know which devices are connecting to that. So limited level of device provisioning, we are doing that for and that's the MAG, the mobile API gateway part of the CA's API management solution itself. Service bus is, we call it, it's in two different distinct functional areas. One is enterprise service bus, and the other one we call media service bus. On the enterprise service bus, we are exposing our enterprise system like ERP. In our case, we are using SAP, and it's always very rigid and hard to get out APIs that are compatible or that are more integratable with your other system that you have across your organization. So we are using this, the API gateway, the CS API gateway, to expose certain of our SAP APIs, transform them, and it's all WSDL-based OData stuff that comes out of SAP. And some of the systems that are being developed by some other developers, they expect, or they're more easy with RESTful APIs. So what we're doing is we're getting those OData WSDL services, passing them through the gateway itself, and then exposing the data as simple to use and integrate RESTful APIs. And not just that, if you remember the integration pattern that I talked about, how different multiple services can come in and form a new service. So the requirement was that the way we do, let's say, our financial data, because we do business in mostly, let's say, in Qatari riyals, because we are based in Qatar. And at the same time, when we deal with the international business, we have to do certain things which are in US dollars in that case. And what matters the most in that case is the exchange rate between the Qatari riyal and the US dollars, and how do we mix and merge together to bring in the right expense, let's say, sheet out of that. So one of the service was where we did is we have our invoices, let's say, that we are paying to our vendors, and to make sure that we have unified sheet coming out of it in terms of the expenses. There are two services that are coming out of SAP. One is the actual amount, and there's another one that is about the exchange rate when the actual transaction happened. And previously that particular application is a custom line of business application. It was making two calls to the SAP gateway, to the SAP API gateway. They have a product called API Gateway SAP, and then getting the data, which is the transactional data, and getting the exchange rate, and then applying the multiplications and getting out the service at the application level. What we have done is that we have mixed and merged these two services at the API gateway level. So it's the API gateway that sends out two calls, brings in the data, applies all the calculations, and exposes that as one single service to make it easier for the developer of that line of business application so it has really, I would say, the level of efforts that it takes to integrate and consume this data, API Management Gateway has definitely taken it for us. It has taken it to the next level. Then when it comes to the media service bus part, we are integrating our media systems, and that means our digital asset management and our media asset management for the broadcast, and then syncing all that to the cloud. That's where we say taking media to the cloud. And it's not the video asset itself that is, in this case, synced through the gateway, but all the metadata and all the transformations that happen around the metadata is something that the gateway is handling and syncing it across different source and target within the network and on the cloud. We're using Azure Media Services for that purpose. And something similar related to that is we are using from the newsroom is we recently had the US elections. So the first point within the network that receives the data is our newsroom, and then passing on that data on to different digital platforms would mean that you get in the data, make it in a more easier to use and consume way for our digital platforms apps, and then exposing that onto websites or our mobile apps or even to the partners. And we're doing it across all our digital distribution platforms, which are on web, mobile, connected platforms, gaming consoles, you name it. I mean, even IoT stuff, when we talk about Amazon Echo or this Google Home, all the smart home concepts that are coming up, making sure that that data becomes available to that. API gateway is at the heart of all those transactions happening. And the most important one, actually, our investment in the API gateway started with this part, but then when we discovered and we found out it's much more than that. The gateway is much more than what we actually initially started working on. That was the content APIs to distribute our news contents across different platforms, and that means the way we mix and merge contents across different platforms. And I have an example here. Let's say when you distribute your contents on the social networks, let's say Twitter has a character limit for the news that you can send out, and you have to use the URL shortening services, like Bitly is one of those, or there are many other that you use. So the use case that we have is that our content management system is integrated to a similar service. It's called But URL. It's by a company called 44 Doors. And what they do is they provide their APIs. We give them a long URL, and in return, they give us a short URL. Our content management system is integrated with their APIs to get this long URL shortened through the gateway itself. And the efforts that it took us to seamlessly integrate both the endpoints was just in, it's a few clicks on the policy manager side, and you're done with that. Also, on the product side, all the contents that are being produced are passing through the gateway, because you have to do a certain level of transformations. And if I dig deeper into transformations, the level of transformation that we are doing is that, let's say on a content management system side, every article might have an asset attached to that. An asset means it might be an image, or it might be a video in this case. We use Brightco for all our online asset management, video assets. And usually what we do is, because depending on where you are using your contents, you might need a different rendition or different quality of your video across different platforms. So what we do is, we only, on the content management system side, we only use the ID, the video ID that is attached to the article. And then depending on where you're distributing it, you would just serve the right version of that. And where the API management comes in is on the lookup side, is that while packaging, I would say massaging the data and packaging the data and making sure that it's being made ready for the target platform, is that it would get that data from content management system, get the video ID, send it to Brightco APIs, get the MP4 URLs, depending on what renditions you want to serve to the right platform, merge it and mix it up with the outgoing response, I would say transform the message, bring that in, and then serve the right content or the right platform. So there's a lot of transformation and lookup is happening. There's so many use cases of this type of transformation that we're doing all the time. We're also distributing contents to the partners, and every partner would come up with its own schema requirements. And I can, especially the people who work on the API management side, you'll know that whenever you have to consume APIs, you have to consume on someone else's schema. And whenever you have to serve out the APIs, you have to serve out the schema that the other party understands. It's always a challenge, on that side. So the API gateway is really helping us respond back to different schemas, different formats, sometimes different even protocols, and making sure that it's getting through to the partners. We are just in the process of setting up the Gateway's portal, the developer portal for our upcoming hackathons, and to make sure that our APIs are easily discoverable and those are well documented for the developer community. Something that we were not doing previously on our APIs, but that's what we have stepped into and we are doing is productizing and monetizing the APIs. And that would mean the way you distribute contents to the partners. How do you make sure that your contents, the way these are being produced and consumed and bought in by your partners, it brings you the revenue that you deserve and you need. It means you need better analytics around that, you need better SLA and the threshold and the quota around the calls that somebody can make to your calls, and then you attach the monetization aspects to that serving out of that. And of course, all that is in the context of content distribution that API management has been, I would say, an excellent platform in making sure that any of the distribution needs that we have are being met in the right way. So if I call these 4 blocks as the 360 view of any organization's requirements for API management, it would end up as, what we call is the A, B, C, D, and E of the business, of doing business. And how the API management is helping us in that is, it's really from business to automation to automate certain things, to let 2 machines or 2 systems talk to each other, business to business, business to consumer, business to developer, as I said, the hackathon stuff, and business to enterprise. All these B to A, B, C, Ds are, if you want to find out a solution, I would say that we have found that CA's API management platform has ticked all the boxes of all the capabilities that might be required for this. And for us, to be honest, it's just the beginning. I mean, we are just starting up with this, and we are finding it as an amazing platform to work on. In the end, we have worked closely with with the CA team. They have been an excellent team to work with. It's a beautiful relationship and partnership that we have with them. Just a few, we have Wael from Qatar. I mean, he's our, I would say, account manager. Excellent person to work with, and the way he has helped us through the whole journey, it has been excellent. And from our side, I'm Rizwan, and I have my colleague Jad, who is the lead principal API engineer. And as I say that, all that we do is we love talking about the digital platforms, whatever they are, no matter what the objective is. With that, thank you so much. If you have any questions, anything that you want to ask about, comment about, please, you're welcome.